Have you ever read a program and thought to yourself, that was easy? Variables are clear and well named. Functions have a specific purpose. The program is well designed and well organized. A program like this is easy to read and understand. Reading is effortless, and this is something we need to strive for as programmers, effortless reading. We can do this by writing clean, clear, meaningful code. In this video, I offer 6 ways you can do just that. Let's get started. If you're joining me for the first time, then welcome. I'm Amy, and on this channel I talk about learning, programming, and skill building. Let's dive into it. Before we get into the tactics for writing better code, let's take a step back and think about why you should want to write clean, clear, meaningful code in the first place. Many programmers aim for short, clever code. However, shorter isn't necessarily better. Neither is clever code. You know, code that causes you to spend an unnecessary amount of time trying to figure out. We shouldn't intentionally make code complex or confusing. Instead, we should aim to write clean, clear, meaningful code. And truth be told, that's the harder type of code to write. Anyone can make something complex. It's a lot harder to make it clean, clear, and meaningful. But writing clean, clear, meaningful code is time well spent. That's because it's the easiest for the reader to understand, and often that reader is our future self. So we know that clean, clear, meaningful code matters. Now, let's talk about how you can go about doing this. First, choose variable names wisely. Oftentimes, I read programs filled with one-letter variable names. For example, a program might be littered with random letters like T, V, R, or S. But these one-letter variable names can be confusing and misleading. The reader has to assume what T represents, and that's never a good thing. Instead of making your reader assume what T, V, R, or S represents, be direct. Write total instead of T or result instead of R. It's equally confusing when a variable name is plural when it should be singular or vice versa. Does the variable represent many items or one item? Writing meaningful names is hard to do, but Steve McConnell's book Code Complete offers excellent naming advice. He writes, state in words what the variable represents. Often, that statement itself is the best variable name. So ask yourself, what does this variable represent? In my experience, and to McConnell's credit, the answer to this question is often the best variable name. The second way to write better code is to spend more time refactoring. Many writers spend much of their time editing. That's because it's one thing to get words on paper. It's something else entirely to have those words make sense. Likewise, it's one thing to have a correct solution. It's something else entirely to write an efficient and effective solution. Let's be honest, our first solution is usually not the best one, even if the solution is in fact correct. There are always ways we can improve our code, whether that's a better algorithm, data structure, or variable name. No matter what type of your writing you're doing, remember this truism: the writing is in the editing. Tip number 3 is quite simple. After you complete a program, read your code out loud. The key phrase here is out loud. When you read your code out loud, you'll engage another sense, your hearing. And what you catch with your ears is different than what you catch with your eyes. If your code sounds awkward, if it sounds a bit off, then there's probably more work to do. Pause and improve your code. The fourth way to become a better writer of code is to become a vast reader of it. In other words, the more you read, the better you'll write. Writers of prose are vast readers. As a writer myself, I can attest to the validity of that claim. I read to get ideas. I read to better understand the craft, both what to do and what not to do. I read in order to write better. And these are reasons why I'm also an avid reader of code. It's surprising to me that writers of code don't prioritize reading. Computer scientist Gerald Weinberg seems to share the same sentiment. Programming is, among other things, a kind of writing, he writes in his book, The Psychology of Computer Programming. One way to learn writing is to write, but in all other forms of writing, one also reads. We read examples, both good and bad, to facilitate learning. As you become a vast reader, you'll become a better writer. This is true of any kind of writing, be it prose or code. One way to put this idea into action as a programmer is to solve a problem, then study the code of others who've solved the same problem. For example, solve a problem on LeetCode or Exercism, then study the solutions offered in the community solutions on either platform. Okay, so it's important to write clean and meaningful code. But how do you remember to do this? The solution is to use a checklist. Create a checklist to outline the important steps in writing a program or solving a problem. A checklist gives you peace of mind that your work is accurate and complete. It also reminds you of the important tasks that might slip your mind, such as writing meaningful variable names while in the midst of coding. The final way to write clean, clear, meaningful code is to read William Zinsser's book on writing well. Now, I admit Zinsser's book is for writers of prose, but many of his principles are applicable to our work as writers of code. After all, writers of code and writers of prose are in the same business, communicating clearly. What are your thoughts about writing clean, clear, meaningful code? Leave a comment and let me know at the end of this video. In the meantime, if you want to hear more about programming, learning, and skill building, then please hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching and make it an effective day.